Welcome to this April edition of our Kentucky K-12 Education Technology Leaders webcast. David Couch, Department of Education. This is your opportunity to get updated on some things going on at the state and national level, but also your opportunity to provide us feedback throughout the webcast. We have Go Soapbox that's available. You can see right there. We have some questions that we have pre-populated, and they are open now for you to respond to. But anything else that you would like to discuss, we'll take a look at those and either respond to them during the webcast or right afterward. But typically those that bubble up to the very top, we spend some time covering those. I have with me today Mike Lettingham, Jeff Cebulski, and Marty Park. Those are the first ones, the topics that we'll be hitting on. And Dee Dee Connor and Phil Coleman and Chuck Austin are also available in the audience to come up along with Lisa Moore if we need their expertise throughout it. So thank you for joining us this morning. So let's talk about the very first topic that we have on the agenda, and it's an update on the legislative session, particularly the ones that packed Kentucky K-12 Education Technology. The session ended officially yesterday. And there was even lots of activity on Friday and Saturday, but officially came to an end yesterday. And Lisa Moore was telling me that, and I guess I didn't realize they have this. The governor's budget office has up to 60 days before they have to release all the details to the department about the budget. Typically, it occurs much faster. That's why I say 4 to 6 weeks. We should know in a pretty concrete way the specifics of the budget, how they affect the Office of Education Technology and Kentucky K-12 Education Technology. So as we know with certainty, obviously we'll share that with you all, but it appears that there may be a while before we know, and I know our budget office within KD asked for that. But given, once again, that this was lots of activity was happening on Friday and Saturday, it may be a while before we know what the final numbers are, but once again, we'll know. And we were answering from a couple of different perspectives that affect education technology. First of all, the KETS funds, those are called Kentucky Education Technology Systems funds. The Kentucky K-12 Internet funds, also called KEN, Kentucky Educational Network. The IT Academy, the Microsoft IT Academy. The Office of Education Technology Operational Funds, and virtually all those funds and those people go toward supporting school districts. Very few of their time, very little of their time, and very few of those funds is for KD agency exclusively. And then there were some funding sources outside of those. We previously had DataSeam funds; those were zeroed out in previous budgets, and money was added back in this time, $1.75 million over the next 2 years. As I understand it now, once again, these could all change. I need to put draft, asterisk, asterisk, asterisk to almost everything I'm saying with this because it can change. My understanding is the instructional resources was also zeroed out. That is money that could also be spent, it was flex focus funds, that could also be spent on computers and software that has no funding associated with it. And the first items that I mentioned before, the KETS, the K-12 Internet funds, the IT Academy, and OET operational, it's my understanding that, we won't know specifically or cumulatively, but it looks like there's a 6.25% cut that KD will receive on top of the previous cuts that we've already had this year and previous years over the past 10 years that will go on top of that. And so we'll let folks know the impacts of those cuts on those services as soon as we know. There was another education technology related item called FactPack. This is a system that helps keep up with facilities in school districts. And I know they requested X amount of funds, and they got much less than that, so I'm not sure how that impacts them or doesn't impact them. Maybe, so when we find that out, and we'll talk with Robin Kinney, our Chief Financial Officer, leads that service, and so we'll find out down the road here how that impacts them. I think that's the main things I wanted to cover from that is for what we know so far. And if you have any questions about that, let me know. Obviously, Mike will talk a little bit later about the KETS offers. Given we don't know yet how the current budget impacts When I mentioned KETS funds and other funding, we won't be able to talk specifically about what the KETS offers will be for the next school year until we know that a whole lot better. But the KETS offers for this year have, I think our last offer.
We combined the first two offers. Those have all been, those offers have been made. And then what would have been a third offer, which is now a second offer, being that we've combined the first two, will be occurring within the next couple of weeks. We'll begin those, and that's the $5, which makes the total 21 for the year that we're in. So,
Okay.
so we'll be moving on those within the next couple of weeks.
Okay, still on track to do that. Okay. Let's talk about STLP. That's always a fun. So let's look back, and we haven't got yet to share, and I know we're going to do, try to work on a press release to identify the winners that we had, and I saw the footage, which is fun to watch, of the beginning of the webcast, especially the end, when the students realize they are the state champions.
Yeah.
And it was as loud. We've been doing that. I think that was our 11th one as a state championship, and that's the loudest it's ever been.
It may have been the biggest crowd that
Yeah.
stuck around for the
Yeah,
award show.
it was
so.
a big,
It was
big crowd too,
yeah.
and they were, and I liked how they cheered all throughout it for classmates within their school, not in their school.
Yeah.
It was a lot of fun, but that at the end, and the crying, which was awesome. I had fun crying. It wasn't a sad crying. It was a happy crying, and just the reactions. And we captured, and we'll share that clip at the end when my favorite part of it is when the students recognize they are a state champion. They're
look at each other.
they're trying to do the numbers. It says everybody
Oh.
left the stage yet or not, and trying to figure it all out.
Me?
Is it me?
What?
Is it? And,
Yeah.
and so there's that hesitant. And then when they realize that how fun it is for them, and then there's their parents, and then the teachers and the STLP leaders that have gotten them there. It was fun, but also the part was fun for me is when I saw the group from Allen Elementary. They brought a large group, but they were also, before we were taking photos, their other teammates came up and were giving them high fives. They were bending over the stage, which was a lot of fun.
Well, their teammates, it was amazing because, and we'll look at our top 7, but we had a couple of the schools that were our champions were also the same district had top 7 teams.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of teams right there, right up to the last second.
So I wanted to spend some time identify those. We'll do a press release. And we're going to try to get better at all this because I know when it ends, we're kind of worn completely out and trying to catch, and we're spinning catch up from a lot of times.
Yeah.
But we do want to recognize the districts. I know when Allen Elementary came back, they had, just like you would if you won an athletic state championship. They had the police and I don't know if it was fire trucks or not, meet them at the county line
Escort,
and
yeah.
escort them in.
Fireworks.
Fireworks.
They did
Yeah.
do fireworks, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Very
It's great.
exciting.
Good
Yeah.
stories.
So,
Well, so just straight up before we say anything, just again a thank you to the CIOs and the digital learning coaches and the teachers and the coordinators who helped make it happen. Again, we can't do this without their help, and they help make it a successful day throughout the year, but particularly that state championship day obviously is a big part of why it's so successful. Of course, the kids work all year to get there. So,
but we asked them, and if you've never attended, we always try to recognize the folks, because I always remind folks we have a staff of 1 that leads STLP, so we count on all these volunteers
Absolutely.
within the school districts, but also universities and state agencies. Obviously, our staff is committed to it. It's a thank you. We try to have the students just say a thank you to those that make a great opportunity happen for you.
yeah. And we'll also to the leaders that helped us get there. We're collecting feedback from them, how we can make it stronger.
Roughly how many volunteers do we have?
I mean, if we think about volunteer judges, we know that we had about 400 people there to be judges as volunteers. We had about 150 core sort of volunteers running the show, and then we have a good sort of the leadership team equals about 50 folks. So there's a lot of people there to make it
It's
happen.
almost 600.
Yeah.
600, 700 that are helping us
Absolutely.
make that happen.
Yeah.
And I was reminded they're not being paid. They're not, this big amount. I mean, it's the goodness of their heart. That's why I try to remind the students is people are doing this not for the money part, but just to make a great opportunity for them.
Absolutely.
So, and I do thank all of you for all those that have made this happen, and just to see the growth of it. I mean, a 40% growth in the participation, and it was fun at the beginning, reminding students, "Hey, we're doing pretty well in Kentucky." We asked them, a couple questions, and said, "Is it Kentucky? Is it Florida? is it New York or California? And all the answers were Kentucky, but it was fun saying it's not California, it's not New York, it is Kentucky.
And I love the point that you made that with STLP being sort of the national leader, the best student technology leadership program in the country, if you win in Kentucky, that makes you the best in the country.
And you're very competitive. And then
Yeah.
when one of our leaders was winners was leaving the stage, they were telling me about a competition you were saying. He said, "How do you think we'll do?" I said, "Well, you won Kentucky. I like your odds."
And worked out pretty well for them. So for the day, we had approximately the folks that were up estimated. We had somewhere between 12 and 13,000 folks throughout the day come through. A good almost 600 projects made it from regionals to the state level, level 3. 71 teams actually made it to the level 3, the finalists. We had the 60 best in showcase come across the stage, so they had a chance to be on stage. We also had lots of folks walk away with awards and be recognized for the work that they did with their digital products and other live competitions throughout the day. But once those top 70 came around, and then the 60 came across the stage, that left us with the top 11. And Andy, if you get a chance to pull that up for us, we can look at, here are the top 7 teams. So these were we had 11 teams on the stage. Here were the top 7 teams who were essentially our semifinalists from Western Middle in Jefferson County, and Auburndale in Jefferson County also, Highland Elementary there in Davis County, and then Bryan Station had 2 teams make it into the top 7 with their projects. Of course, Floyd County also had a championship team, but their James D. Adams Middle School was a top 7 team, as well as Oakview Elementary from Ashland Independent.
And that Bryan Station team, what was interesting is they've won, I think, 2 state championships.
Correct,
The last
back
2.
to back.
Last 2,
Yeah.
and they were defending champs, and so their team had divided. I don't think there's a personality thing. They just said, let's create 2 other projects.
Yeah.
So they had divided, and so it's interesting, both of those.
Yeah, right there. It
Yeah,
was
right
amazing.
there.
It was
right there.
amazing.
Yeah.
And then let's look at our champions if we get a chance. Here's our K through 5 division team from Adair County, Adair County Primary Center. Fantastic, big shout out to Adair County. This is really, last year they really focused on, they were going to make a commitment, and they have decided district-wide that STLP is going to be a priority. So thank you to them for making it happen.
And
Clearly, it's paying
their
off.
reaction was just
Oh my
fantastic.
Yeah, if we could bottle that, we could solve all the world's problems.
And I love that picture too. I mean, look at them holding it up. I
So
mean, it's
proud.
just
His buddy's hugging him. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. So there was our K through 5 winners, and our 6 through 8 division champs there from Floyd County, Allen Elementary School. They got the police escort back into town when they got home.
And they were also, this past week, at the Kentucky Valley Educational Cooperative Fire Summit,
Yeah.
featured there, showing their showcase. And I think there's actually a performance that's coming up at the Mountain Art Center to where, I mean, their project was about, tell them a little bit about their
So
project.
their project was they used essentially what, if you're familiar with the concept of the makey-makey, where you're using objects to create essentially a touch point where you can then program what they touch to be certain phrases. And so they were using
Through electric current or sensors.
exactly, basically closing a circuit when they touch it as the current travels through them. So they have, this project has, which is a prime example of an STLP project done right, started with one idea and has grown and grown and grown as they've used it. They've made it stronger. So what their focus was using these inanimate objects as sort of a on-off switch for special needs students. And for the prime example, what they were doing at their, I think even at the Christmas, they had a Christmas performance, and I don't know, hopefully this isn't a spoiler if anyone's coming to the show, but they were doing a rendition of Kung Fu Fighting, remember that song?
Mm-hmm.
And so as the students are playing along with the song, they are doing when they hit the object, it creates the Kung Fu sound, ooh, ha! So it was interactive, and they're using it with students throughout the district, and it's
They're using technology to design an experience for other kids.
yes, yeah.
And so they can participate in it.
Yeah.
So, which
Absolutely.
is one of the, is what I tell folks about. Most of the projects I find are to help their fellow students or teachers. And community is another part of it. But this is a way for Allen Elementary kids that normally could not participate in performing arts,
Yes.
presentation and performance, now can perform.
And the neat story behind that is
Their way, as I like they put it, they can perform their way.
their coordinator, Mr. Bell, was talking about how they go into classrooms, and the teacher in the classroom finds himself in the back of the room talking to Mr. Bell, saying, "Should I be doing something?" Well, the kids are leading the experience for other students in the classroom. So that's a great sample of that project. And they did have a wonderful showing there at the Fire Summit,
Yep,
which was
yep.
fantastic.
So they were featured in a certain part of that
Yeah.
summit. They had 150 educators in Eastern Kentucky there, and they were prominently featured as someone to come up and talk about what they were doing, as they should be.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Very excited. Let's take a look at our 9 through 12 champs there from Hardin County Early College Career Center. Super excited group of folks there. There's some great photos of them out doing some presentations as well. And then, if we could go ahead.
I just want to give a heads up to all those. Besides doing a press release, I want to come and visit
Yes.
each one of these projects at their school and talk with the students. I got a chance to do that at Allen Elementary. Keep in mind, a lot of the regional competitions I get to see, but I don't know who's going to make it up to the state level. And some of these I've not seen, so I'm announcing the winners.
Yeah.
I've not really seen them in action, so I want to see the full presentation. So I want to go to Hardin County and
And,
visit those students.
and Marty made a great point. Our 6 through 8 division winners are in elementary school, but because of the way we break the divisions down, K through 5,
Great.
6 through 8, they actually have that's a 6th grade
Right.
team. They happen to be in elementary school, but
Yeah,
they
yeah.
were in the middle school
Yeah,
division.
yeah.
And then last but not least, we have one last group, the technical expertise team from Ashland Independent, from Ashland Middle School. Amazing project. What's interesting about these guys is not only was this project fantastic, and they have a great project team, but if you look at the next slide, members of the team also, while they were the technical winners, purely technical winners for the STLP State Championship, some of the members of the team also are part of the Samsung Solve for Tomorrow team there at Ashland Independent, and they just won an
What's
award of,
$150,000.
I mean, you could have bought my house.
Yeah.
That's-
So they immediately left the STLP state
Yeah.
championship, had to get to
New York.
New York.
New York.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's when they were asking me, says, well, what do you,
Yeah.
you just won this, what do you think? And I said, I like
What
your
are our
chances.
And I was like, yeah, I think you're going to be okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So a lot, and so with a lot of great experience. We talk a lot about how STLP presentations gives a lot of the skills of talking with adults and soft skills and presentation skills, and clearly that was not all of why they won, but certainly, hopefully, that had some influence on
I think the fun part about being the son of a teacher, I get to see all the compliments that my mom's former students have, and the difference they say that years later it's made in their lives. And so I made a post about our STLP State Championship, and what was fun for me is one of our STLP students back in 1995 responded and said, just wanted you to know, STLP had a significant impact on my life and the career choices that I have made. And she's in a field that it makes sense, but you do hear that. I mean, it does.
Yeah.
And I was at a superintendent's meeting at KVAC, and superintendents usually don't say, talk about it. It talked about the difference this makes for their students. Today, the life skills they get today, but also preparing them for the future. So I've always envied my mom for that. I got to see a little bit of that this weekend.
Just emphasis on, and just all of our ed tech leaders across the state, emphasis on any opportunity that we have. And you made the point, you called it out a little bit ago, that our Kentucky kids are competitive with anybody on the globe, and so just to look up a couple weeks ago and to see those same students on the Jumbotron, the big screen, and then the following week to see them on Good Morning America talking about
Amazing.
Well, that's where I remind
it's
folks,
fantastic.
when we opened it, is I hesitated for a long time to say it, but I say it now, is Kentucky does have the best overall education technology system in America. Overall, because I see it from my peers, and obviously we want to build upon that and continue to maximize what we have in place. And that's why it was important for me to share that with the students, because you're thinking, well, these other states must be much better than us, and the states they always list are far behind us. They wish they were us, put in that place, but also to remind them that Kentucky K-12 has the biggest STLP system and the best in the United States. And so truly, it is an area to where if you compete on our stage, you are prepared to go anywhere in this country and compete. And I love seeing what those, Ashland students have done, but I would take any of those, our
Absolutely.
students, and they'll do quite well. And, a lot of life is confidence. Sometimes you think, well, I did this, I couldn't compete on a bigger level. And that's part of the reason we do these is you have some kids, and, like you had Allen Elementary. They went and took on the entire state. What a confidence building experience that is for them. And now they're going to represent. What we do at the state level is for these 4 teams, we pay for them to go to a conference. And so 3 of these will go to our ISTE event, our International Society for Technology Education in Chicago. And then our technical winner from Ashland, we'll let them choose wherever they want to look, within reason. I mean, we can't send them to Europe or whatever, but most of the time we let them pick an event that is pure technical that they would like to discuss, but they can go to ISTE as well if they would like to do that.
Sure.
Yeah. So good stuff. Jeff, thank you.
My
Thank you for the
pleasure.
great stuff you do for kids and all the
It's an honor.
and all the stuff that trying to get all the volunteers that make a really great experience happen for kids. Really, it was a good one.
Thank
and I wanted to recognize
Best one yet.
Best one yet.
Best one yet. Wait till next year.
No pressure.
It's always fun at KISTE. We go, Jeff, you're next up after that event's done. Marta, can you bring us up to speed on the computer science academic standards?
Absolutely. So the Kentucky Academic Standards for Computer Science, we've been talking about this over the last 6 to 8 months. We knew it'd be about a year-long process, David, and we're close to the goal line, I think, which is awesome. We're in the feedback mode. Just last Monday, a week ago, we met with, we brought some feedback partners in. Transform Education Kentucky, Kentucky Education Television, we refer to as our K group partners, Kentucky Reading Association, Ohio Valley Education Cooperative. So Greg was with us, Terry Stice was with us, and we spent a large part of 2.5 hours getting feedback from different experts in the field. And our point with our computer science standards to be adopted and approved by our Kentucky Board of Education is to really change the invitation to computer science in Kentucky. So who's invited? There's not enough girls in computer science related areas. We know that when we think about critical thinking, computational thinking, we know that computer science skills help us there. Our underrepresented students, our socioeconomic challenged students are not represented enough in the computer science field, and we know that jobs are available in Kentucky and in other states, and we want our Kentucky students to be competitive in those jobs. And so we feel like we have probably about 4 or 5 more weeks of edits, revision based on feedback, but we submit this week to go through that official process to be at our June board meeting to be approved.
The Kentucky Board of Education.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And so we hope this week to post the draft of those standards to the Kentucky Department of Education website. We've received a lot of email questions about, hey, can I see the draft? And we're at that point this week to be able to post that draft to the website. So be on the lookout for that. It's been a great partnership with our Office of Teaching and Learning and our Office of Career and Technical Education. And so pretty excited about it. And once we get those out, then we'll take that next step of upping our game and ramping up with teachers.
Okay. Thanks.
Jeff, before you jump up, we want to have one shout out to all the alumni that come back.
Absolutely.
I mean, people that are retired, students that have been involved in it, that come back.
Within those ranks of the volunteers, one of our strongest groups are our alumni who come back. From our engineer alumni who come back, we've had Mr. Kenny Franks has come back every year. This was the first year he missed, and he felt so guilty that he made a big donation.
I saw Allie
and
there
got
this year.
and got Google to match his donation to KISTE. Allie, our Michael Phelps of STLP, who's won the most awards, was there.
Actually, my daughter got her picture taken with Allie.
That's
Yeah,
right.
that's right.
That's right. Did she autograph?
Yeah.
She should. It's very
From
cool.
Marion County, yeah.
So absolutely, and as you mentioned, we have so many, STLP since 1994. It's been a generation of folks who've been in STLP. So we see so many alumni who maybe don't even know they're alumni, who are leaders in different things.
Yeah.
So it's really exciting. But thank you to all of thank you for bringing that up, Dee Dee. Appreciate that.
And just to close that out is Marty's daughter, presented from that large audience. In what grade she in?
She's in 5th grade.
Yeah, and so what a great life experience I never would imagine in 5th grade talking about it. But also, we opened the conference with actually a 5th grader.
Mm-hmm.
And I went and talked to her about how poised it was. I could never have pulled that off, and what a great life skill it was. And, she didn't seem that, there was a little bit of nerves. She's a 5th grader opening it up. And, it was one of those times where people were talking and not paying attention. I said, I was paying attention. I was watching
Absolutely.
her very closely, and what a cool
Absolutely.
moment that was.
What's she doing next year about 5 o'clock on? We could have a new host. That'd be great.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to see me up there for 2 hours.
That's
so.
right. Yeah.
But thank you.
What's your daughter's name?
Nielsen.
Yeah.
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 Rockstar.
I asked her, she seemed more calm this year, but she says she was still a little nervous, but wow, it's
Yeah.
fun to watch.
Very cool.
Right, thank you.
She's pretty cool.
She is. So let's talk about the KISTI CIO Summit. One of the things that we do is we take your all's feedback and we circle back, and during these webcasts, talk about each one of those as we go through it. But I want to talk about, first of all, just the one of the topics we had for our last webcast. We just talked about how many people got something out of it. I think it's a positive thing for us to. How's everything going? It's a positive thing for us to keep on doing. We want to keep on doing that going forward, but also some feedback on just the timing of it going forward in future years. And so I want to give you a little bit of the background in history of it, just going through of it. Our goals for the summit have always been to have 95% of the time where you all provide information and we're listening. And so it's a great opportunity for you all to provide information to us, and for us to respond to that, just not get it. The other part is we want to try to time it so a high percentage of folks are attending. Somewhere between 70-80%. We'd like 100%. We know that's not realistic in a lot of cases, and some folks just choose they don't want to be part of that particular event. Just like the webcast, we typically get somewhere between 70-80% that are watching
We've
this.
done really well.
This live. So that's a really good
Yep.
amount of feedback to base future decisions on, to be honest with you. So we want as high as possible because we're getting ready to make some big decisions based upon that feedback. But also we want to do it at a timing where their mind was pretty fresh and not worn down. And so if you take a look at when we chose to do it, is we did not want it to be its own separate event. Kind of like the Superintendent Summit is its own complete separate thing. And we didn't want to have some people travel to it and come back and it was just its own separate thing, because we don't do it an all-day event like the Superintendent Summit. We have it for a couple hours, not the full day. But wanted to partner with something that a lot of ed tech leaders were already attending in some kind of way. Also, we thought when we first did this, the KISTI Summit was the perfect environment. And the CIO Summit could be the way that, like a team huddle for a large percentage of the CIOs across the state before they actually started a lot of the KISTI events. And just to remind you of somewhat of the history of the timing, and it shows you the popularity of the KISTI event is how much it has grown.
Right.
And much like the conference we used to host was multiple days, 3 or 4 days, is the KISTI conference has grown, from just a 2-day event. So when we first picked the timing of the CIO Summit, it was on a Wednesday afternoon. There was nothing else scheduled that day because KISTI events didn't start till Thursday morning and went till Friday. As the years passed, I'm not sure when we changed it to the morning. I don't know if that was 2 years ago. And the main reason we changed it to Wednesday morning is because certain official KISTI events and presentations were starting to occur on Wednesday afternoon. And so we said, we'll move it on back. Not to get in its way, but to be just kind of the lead-in the folks that want to join it. So this year we're taking a look at the timing, and it may be the conference has grown to a piece that we actually have to move it to a Tuesday afternoon, and we'll see if Wednesday morning still fits going forward. We're going to be working with Matthew Constant, who leads that event for the following year, and I know a survey is being sent out to all the ed tech leaders about the timing, getting that feedback as well. Friday, I know that was mentioned in a couple responses during our last webcast, is probably and realistically, people are worn down by Friday afternoon, and some have to make really long drives back. And so I think that the going back to our primary goals of having, fresh mind and high attendance is we would probably have very low attendance on a Friday, and people are pretty much worn out. And even though they may attend to stay, they'll be worn out, and they'll be, heading off, or we wouldn't get as much as we could get if we had at the beginning. So we'll work on that. And that timing, we'll listen. We'll be working with Matthew going forward.
Yeah, just we'd emphasize be on the lookout for that from KISTE leadership. It's been a great partnership, and we've had some good collaborative conversations with Matthew and Greta and the team there.
Yep. Okay. So thanks for that. But I'd also want to let's talk about the contracts. Mike, that was one of the pieces that we have. And before we talk about it, I want to talk about just the importance of the product standards that we've had in place. So the first one is the reason you have product standards is to help you drive down costs. And one of the basic 101s of driving down costs is there has to be a commitment to use the contract and to buy certain product with X amount of time. That's like 101s of contracting and trying to drive down costs. And so at the beginning of KETS many years ago, in the early 90s, we wanted to use statewide contracts for certain items to help leverage the buying power of the entire state. I do think Kentucky does equity better than any other state, particularly in education technology. And so equity is about having the same price and service no matter how small the district is or how large it is, how rural or urban it is, and the buying power of the district. So previous to KETS, those small rural or even mid-sized rural districts paid significantly more, and had their service times to repair things a lot longer. There was no doubt about it. I mean, it was factual. I mean, we're seeing the data coming in and the actual purchases that districts were making. And so the really great thing about KETS is it did drive that down. And it gave us the leverage of a state. If a certain vendor was not performing, you had the leverage of removing their contract for the entire state, and from districts that had a lot more buying power, were a lot bigger, and they're afraid to lose that service, and so you're leveraging the weight of the entire state to drive that down. And we have saved millions of dollars, billions of dollars since the 90s in taking that approach. It also gives us the ability, when folks say with cybersecurity, not that we're perfect in any way, but if you take a look at the amount of incidences that we have in Kentucky K-12 compared to other states, the reason that we have a lot less and a lot less severe is because of the product standard approach that we have statewide with services. Particularly, we have our K-12 internet services are statewide. And just a reminder, Kentucky was the first state to have internet to every school and every district office and a fiber to all of them, and there's still a good amount of states that don't have it, even after all these years. And it's because we leverage the buying power of the entire state to make something good happen for all, versus leaving out a huge portion of the state, which has happened in a very high percentage of other states. The other part of it that came into play was the operation and support. And as you take a look at some of the things Mike's going to be talking about here in just a minute, is we've done our study of the people side of ed tech, and the more end devices and types of them that you have, definitely different manufacturers that you have, the more difficult it is for the staff to keep up with all those. So let's say you have 10 different manufacturers, 5 different manufacturers. It really makes it difficult for a tiny IT staff in districts, ed tech staff, IT staff in districts, or in companies to keep up with it. So for example, if you take a look at UPS has one brand that they use and have used for quite some time. It's very common in the corporate sector. Once again, it helps drive down costs, but just the efficiency of trying to keep those supported. So we're not saying we're going to go down to one, but just be careful of what you ask for, as I say, going forward, because when you open it up, for tiny tech staffs, you could be overwhelmed with 10 different types of manufacturer products, not just the same manufacturer, but 10 different types that you're trying to operationally support. The other plus side we've gotten since the beginning of KETS is the integration. Because we have product standards, we can integrate and tie things in together much faster, but also the professional development and training. As districts and as teachers and students go between districts in Kentucky, there is a lot less retraining that has to occur, and a lot of the data goes back and forth with them because they're using the same system. For example, Kentucky having the same financial management system and student information system is the edge that we have on all other 49 states. And you combine that with our high-speed network standardization. No other state has it or is close to that, and so we're able to reap all the benefits of having product standards. Now, having said that, we always take a look at, and the purpose of this was very specific. Which existing state contracts do we have that you see zero value in going forward, that we need to totally remove? And which services do we not have that we have never in the past established a state contract for? Should we establish one for the first time? Those are the two specific areas that we asked to be focused on during the summit and on today, wanting feedback. Now, the feedback we got from you on the summit was pretty clear on the top, 2 or 3 items, and I'll let Mike go through those. The items that to establish new ones was not so clear. Some of it was a timing issue of an issue that we had happen in Kentucky that may have related to that being mentioned so often. But I'll hand this part of it over to you since you've seen the results of both the items they want totally eliminated in every way, and then the new ones they want added.
So, just to kind of reiterate a little bit of what you said, when we did the CIO Summit, we kind of had 3 categories of things that we discussed. The first one was really in line with a lot of what you just talked about, which was why do we do what we do with contracts, what's been the value of contracts, and we didn't receive any feedback in that category that contradicted why we've done contracts and that we should continue to do contracts and the value of contracts. And again, it's a lot of the things that you just spoke to. I just want to mention in that area there was a comment about the value of having a portal with our contracts so people could have interaction and be able to see what's going on, which I think is a good comment. And then they also, another comment that just in addition to what you said was our ability to hold the contract holders accountable and the value of that. And you kind of might have mentioned that within what you said, but that was a specific comment that was mentioned in that area. And again, we didn't receive anything in that area that contradicted why and the value of doing contracts. It really supported the very things that you were mentioning. So then when we go to our question about what contracts don't have any value, I got to be cautious about how I would speak to what our responses was, because the way you just said it, David, was what contracts have zero value. Well, I don't know that we received clear feedback on ones that had zero value, more so on what ones in their current state and the way the contracts are done do not provide the value that they would provide if they were done differently. And so the printer contracts is an example of that. So in some instances, the printer contracts, I think we got feedback that would support they don't provide value in some instances of what the printer contracts are. But to complement that is that a different way of doing printing and a different contract vehicle that would provide for printing services or a multi-function printer option, whether it's printing service or devices, would be of value. So I'm kind of blending these conversations here of the 2 questions that we ultimately answered. So again, I would say that our feedback provided that the whole area of printers is an area that we need to examine, and that the way the contracts currently are in place are not providing the value. And again, we talked a lot about that at the CIO Summit, and the fact that we recognize that printing is being done differently, and ideally, there's a whole lot less printing going on going forward.
I think the other part we look at is just we can see what districts are buying and not buying, just the volume of it. So if certain contracts have very little money being bought from them overall, is the ones we start taking a look at as well. So
well, another thing we talked about was it's what you said. We see that there's money being spent, but there's money's not being spent on these contracts.
Yeah.
That's a big indicator. And again, we covered that at the summit about that being a big indicator. Yeah. So another area in the contracts that don't provide the value that is needed was the voice contracts. And again, I think it's the same thing, not a matter of that we have zero interest in voice contracts in some way or another, but that they need to be different. That's another area where the way voice services are being provided needs to be restructured with the contracts being done a different way. And again, it goes back to a lot of times about buying stuff versus buying a service. And so that's an area that, very clearly was indicated with the feedback that we got during the summit as well. So then let me shift over to the areas where we don't have contracts today, categories of things where we don't have contracts that we need to further look at. And so I'm just going to kind of read through the list here of the ones that stood out and we got several responses on. One was the whole area of security devices. And so things that were captured in that would include cameras, alarm systems, video, intercom systems, network tracking, which I'm not sure on teachers' doors. I was going to say I'm not sure, but on the teachers' door. So there was a variety of little things that were included in that. Now we know there's a couple of things that bubble to the top when you talk about the whole area of security devices. We also know it was a time of heightened sense of awareness when that was going on. But it is an area that we got to look at that. I mean, what should we do? To what extent should we do? I know every time this conversation comes up, we'll say, well, a lot of school districts have already done or are in the process of doing this. So then you get back to what would be the value of us trying to do any contracts. Because if we can't do contracts, they're going to leverage the buying power, or they're going to create any kind of a consistency in the model, the technology and so forth, then there's not necessarily a value in doing them. So it's an area of need. I think that everybody agrees with that, but is it an area of value for us to do a state contract? I think is still something that we got to question a little bit and we got to examine a little further. So other areas was the learning management system. Again, there's a mixture of some folks have already done things in that area and ones that haven't. The ones that have already done things in that area, are they interested in changing what they've already done? Because that gets into the same conversation. If we're going to do a state contract, then you get into the need to follow and use what has been identified on a state contract, therefore a state standard.
Well, there's a lot of interest, a lot of conversation here about optional contracts. And I think it's a good point to say, optional contracts really don't drive down costs.
That's why I opened up. If you understand if you really focus in on the money side,
Right.
Contracts have their value in saying we will use this contract.
Right.
When you add word optional from someone that's responding to those, it drops. You virtually get zero. I wouldn't say zero, but you get maybe a little bit, a lot less.
So the difference here is
because I understand why someone would say, I want the best of both worlds. I want to have something I could use, but if I didn't like that, I can use my own.
Our goal with when we refer to state CATS contracts has not been about just providing a purchasing vehicle. And when we talk about optional contracts, that's establishing a purchasing vehicle. And we certainly want to be able to point people to purchasing vehicles and help them understand how to get to purchasing vehicles to buy things they need to be able to buy. The state CATS contracts have been more so about establishing standards and the technical standards that would be associated to a product standard. And therefore, getting the leverage of the buying power, and there being a value in establishing that standard because there's interactions that occur between whatever these things may be that we're putting on a contract between the districts, and there's value about the interoperability and the security as you talk about what's going on at the district level versus the state level and how those things got to connect and communicate with one another. It's those kind of things. So there's a big difference in establishing what has been our driving force for our state CATS contracts versus creating a purchasing vehicle.
I'll give some examples. There are certain software contracts we have, software systems. They're not buying software, they're mainly services. That as soon as we stopped buying those at the state level, they went up 20 or 30 to 40% for individual districts to buy them. Because you've lost the ability to leverage the entire state buying them. So, like I say, vendors, and you just think about on the other side, if you're running a business, you're looking at volume and someone has to use their service. That affects you, that has the primary effects on driving down costs. So like I say, purchasing mechanisms, is are we the right ones to put the purchasing mechanism, even though it has no ability to drive, or little ability to drive down costs?
And I think that we absolutely would be open to it would be appropriate for us to respond to if there's a gap where there's not a purchasing for vehicle for something that there needs to be, then by all means, we would want to step in and be able to help out with that. I think it would be hard for us to find that's the case in most cases. I think we could find purchasing vehicles. And again, they may need to be exposed, they need to be talked about, and they may need to have some discussion about the things you need to keep in mind when you're looking at these options if you're purchasing vehicles. I mean,
The LMS is a good one, the example you gave. I can remember talking with the CEO of a company over 20 years ago. He says, everybody's for standards as long as you choose their stuff. And so that goes back to is, once people have bought things and they're kind of like, I like this one. If you really want to have, for example, a standard on LMS, there has to be a really open mind and willingness to say, the one I have may not win a fair and open competitive bid under certain, under these requirements. It may not win it. And so if I'm given these three choices through that for an LMS during this, mine one may not be on there. Am I willing to transfer over?
another thing that come to mind that I just want to throw in there as we're talking about the different considerations about why we do contracts is if there's a requirement to do something. And so if there's a requirement, if something like from a legislative action has required that all school districts or all schools are to do something, then a lot of times that would also be a driving factor of why we might want to establish some kind of a standard or a contract.
Munis was one of those, yeah.
Yeah, whenever that.
Standardized county system.
Yeah, that was something where every school district was required to do that.
Yeah.
Therefore, and again, that was done at a time when a lot of school districts didn't have anything in place, or what they had in place was kind of homegrown or put together. And again, it's been in place and stable for many years now. So a couple of other items that were listed as areas of interest that we don't have contracts now was food service, managed print service, which goes back to what I already mentioned about the fact that we do have options in place now via state contract. And I say options, wrong word. Really, we have state contracts in place now for printing, for buying printers, buying stuff to print with, and the idea is that we need a different vehicle to do printing and more of a printing services, managed print service type options on those state contracts. And then another one that was mentioned that was interesting, and it is one that, you know, it goes back to when you think about throughout the history, was network wiring and the whole idea of doing wiring. And I find that interesting because, but it did bubble to the top. Several people mentioned it, but there's just so many variables involved in that, and that would be complicated in doing a state contract. But certainly, we won't ignore the fact that we need to understand that and look at that and see if there is any kind of value that would be there. But anyways, again, it was another one that bubbled to the top. So, I mean, that's,
Well,
you know.
is there anything that we talked about? We're not making a decision today, so this is not a decision-making discussion. We're just sharing with you the feedback.
And we did have a poll question to get some more
Yeah.
feedback on the two primary questions.
Yeah, so if there-
and
But we had 122 representatives of districts at our summit, so they gave us a pretty good feel. So, you know, this, I guess.
And the
if-
feedback we're getting here is very consistent.
Yeah.
A lot of copier type of
Yeah,
stuff,
yeah.
you know, not necessarily needed, but it pops back up.
Yeah.
And maybe the network lease type copier maybe
Yeah.
be similar to what you said.
The managed
Looking at
print one is the
security
one
stuff.
I think is, out of all of them, offers, because obviously we use it here at this facility, and great value in those. So I do think that is, to me, is one of the very top ones, along with these other ones. But it just helps to hear the district say this is important as well, and it gives us leverage on making the case to establish some of these.
David, Mike, you mentioned, and there's some input on Go Soapbox as well. You mentioned the opportunity to, you know, when we get down and have one product, you certainly drive costs down that way. And then referencing other contracts that we do that have maybe 3 or 4 award winners on that contract. And so there's some good conversation about that. But as we explore additional contract possibilities, learning management systems may be a good one to compare.
You know, and it is a discussion we'd have to have with the chief academic officers as well. So this is not a technical one. A lot of these will be discussing it with lot of other folks. I can remember learning management system was one going back 15 years ago, at Katie, we talked about, do we do that? And the problem associated with that is there was not money. This was right after one of our first big budget cuts that we had in 2004 or 5 timeframe. That we really didn't have the money to buy that service statewide, and was there be a value in doing a bid for 3 or 4?
Yeah.
You know, in hindsight, maybe there would have been, but at the time there wasn't there. So we were there with, they pick a certain amount, do we go for it? But there'll be a discussion. I definitely will take it to our chief academic, Amanda and Stephen, to say, give your feedback too, but keep in mind that the negative of this is we've had X number already implement the learning management system over the past 10 or 15 years. Would they be willing to give that up?
And to reference our digital readiness work, we see every year more districts
Moving.
spending money.
Yeah, they're moving for the free ones
Yeah.
to the using the paid
And
ones.
so, again, a
I
value.
I definitely think so. It could drive down costs, but there would have to be a willingness.
Yeah.
Those that really dug in on one, the willingness to transition off of it. As I say, the CEO of his name is Digital Equipment Corporation. He's the one that said that. Everybody's for standards, and as long as you pick the one they want. So, thanks, Mike. I do want to give and we talked about this our last webcast, the Bill Stillwell Red Suspenders Day. This is a day we're going to do on May 8th just to celebrate Kentucky K-12 education technology and all those people behind the scenes and up front that do great things that help make education technology special for our students and teachers and staff and leaders here in Kentucky. And it is neat that Bill, who also have the Bill Stillwell Award, named after, will have a facility named after him on May 8th at the University of Kentucky campus. And so, to be honest with you, part of Bill's induction ceremony will be mentioning the stuff he's done for K-12, the award that's named after him, and obviously I'll have red suspenders on that day. So even if you don't have red suspenders, I love how some of the students had cut out, some of the, just out of paper, and put red suspenders on there. So let's have fun with May 8th. So let's go to our updates from our directors. Dee Dee, I wanted to go through the data systems update, if you could, please.
Okay. We've got a number one on the questions is related to the front door project and our geographic data collection every year. So we've got geographic coordinates that we collect to make
You
sure
wanna see-
as we put that data out there. It looks like most of the numbers I'm
When
seeing.
you question 1, put it on up there. Yeah.
It looks like
Doing
folks are on point as far as getting this information in. If you're not and you have questions, reach out to us. If you need to know what the geographic coordinates that you already have set are, you can look at the school report card from last year and kind of see that if you've got a point right in the middle of the road, we're probably defaulting to your street address. The intent is that the geographic coordinates are at the front door, so even if your front door changes, you might need to update those. Ryan Adcock can provide you what we have. If you want to reach out to him, you can reach him through the KDE data request at education.ky.gov email address. So if you have questions, we're here to help you. We've extended the time frame to the end of this month. After that, we will forward those geographic coordinates off to the Commonwealth Office of Technology. They use that data and they actually share that data with other big search firms. So not just used within KDE, it's also used outside of KDE. We've also got some training that's coming up, Infinite Campus training coming up. I think we have a question out there. I think it's number 2.
That's invoices. The training is
The
the
training
question.
voice is number 3. I'm sorry.
Go 3.
We've got folks that are planning on coming. We've got others of you that don't. Just help us promote that. We understand that that's from the CIO perspective. Not all of you involved in Infinite Campus, but do help us promote that. We stay very consistent to the schedule. So if somebody just needs to see a half hour of the training, they can pop on for that period of time. We also record this so that it takes about a week to get those out there, but we do get the recorded sessions out so people can take a look at that information too. Another thing on Infinite Campus, and I guess the second question, we have invoice that has just gone out. And you might think, this is really early this year. We normally ask them to bill early, and that's been May. We asked them even to bill even earlier this year. This does not change your due date at all. This is really the due date, final due date is still August 15th. The reason is there's a lot of opportunity here to either pay with old year or new year money, and if there happens to be some old year money that's not in your budget and can be used for Infinite Campus, gives you an opportunity to try to lobby for that. If you don't know if the invoice has been received, or you know it has not been, you can reach out to us for a copy through the same email address, kdeDataRequest@education.ky.gov, or at least reach out to your financial officer and ask them to make sure that they do have that invoice. And again, it doesn't mean they have to pay it right now, but they have the opportunity to pay it with this year's money if they need to. So, those were just a couple things at Infinite Campus. We do have some other training opportunities that are out there on our CASES training page. If you have folks that need training, maybe they're new folks, you can reach out. There's where did that come from? July 9th through the 13th in Elizabethtown. There's going to be some training coming up. So that is another opportunity for you all. We did have user group meetings this last month, and we were able to go out and talk about some of the new things we've got going on. We had a lot of participation there. One of the things that we talked about is a new Infinite Campus partner contract we have is on data visualization. A lot of interest there. I've got a lot of districts that have already volunteered to be a part of that initial pilot to work with us on that. So appreciate all that involvement, but I do want to make sure I mentioned it again here so that you were aware, and as districts, as we do introduce the partnership opportunity and the pilot, we'll make sure you're aware of which districts are piloting and which ones maybe are not. Just one last reminder, maybe not last reminder, but one additional reminder is the Educator Development Suite is going away June 30th. You might think that, again, that's not my thing, but really need to make sure somebody at all the districts is involved in that shutdown. That data will not be available. So if you have any data in the Educator Development Suite that needs to come out, it's time to do the downloads, make sure somebody's on point for getting that information out. That's the personnel type decisions. So just make sure somebody at the schools and districts are aware of that and are making some changes or making some movements towards getting that information.
I think the part that that worries us a little bit is we see this huge use of it.
Yeah.
And besides it being shut down because of the financial situation, there is no rebid to replace it.
Right.
IMS was all on, not to be paid for at the state level. And we had a little bit over a handful of districts that wanted more time. If they want to continue on with IMS, they can use that product or something else. But EDS was one that we had originally anticipated that there would be another product that would take its place. RFP was in process, but once again, because of the funding situation primarily, that is not going to be replaced. So if a district wants that functionality, they will have to use it some other means if they want to continue on. But it was just this huge usage of it was a little bit alarming.
Right.
Were people aware this is being shut down? And so once again, your chief academic officer should be aware of that. And like I say, a lot of things we cover in these webcasts, we're asking to make sure just when you see the person that handles that, you mentioned Infinite Campus, even though that's not your thing, just make sure they're aware of it. And for some reason it may have fallen through their cracks. And I do that all the time here for our staff, is I'll talk to associates and just make sure they're aware of something that they probably should have found out another way. But sometimes they're not aware of it.
You mentioned the instructional management system, and that's the other piece of what we formerly knew as SITS. And it is sunsetting June 30th for those 8 districts for the KDE payment. We've reached out to those districts and asked them to let us know if anybody plans on continuing to use it, or if you're a district that may say they want to go back to using it, is going to procure that. The procurement piece of it, you really need to be working with Pearson on. If there's something that you need to look at getting a contract for, that's directly with Pearson. But don't forget to keep KDE in the loop. Reach out to me, Michael Spence, because there are data exchange processes we have set up with Pearson to make sure that data is available that we don't plan on continuing unless there's somebody using it. So our plans are right now to shut that off June 30th, even for those 8 districts, unless we hear otherwise. So even if we hear otherwise, we're not going to be sending the same amount of data going forward. We would limit it to just the districts that are going to go forward. So do keep us in mind on that. And we have asked for that information by the end of May, but the sooner the better on that. One last thing I wanted to, just as a reminder, with school report card, we will have a lot of work coming up this summer. It might be a little bit later than usual. We're working right now with Bright Bites, who is the partner we've chosen to move forward with on the new school report card, getting data visualizations created, what the dashboard's going to look like. It's still all under consideration. It's all new stuff. But in the meantime, there's a lot that can be done out in the districts to make sure the data's good. We're putting new reports out there. There's reports for some of the foundational data, the student groups. We don't necessarily have all the rubrics finalized here at KDE. So some of the reports are out there with draft rubrics, so don't get too concerned about points or anything like that at this point. But as far as making sure the data is good, we'll be announcing some of these reports that are already out there maybe later this month. We've really given a few districts a chance to look at them, give us some feedback before we make a big splash with those. But if you do look out and you are interested, if you go out and look for QA reports, you're going to see a few out there, or ESSA. You'll see the gifted and talented, and of course we've already introduced the chronic absenteeism, and there will definitely be more to come. So that's about all I've got today, David.
Thank you, thank you. I'll add on to that. I wanted to wait till the appropriate folks made others aware. So anything involving education technology, whether we're funding it or not, I try to keep you aware of it. And it may be stuff that you're not responsible for, but I just try to make sure it's on your radar screen. So I asked our Chief Academic Officer, Amanda Ellis, if anyone in districts has been informed yet of the following. She said yes, that the school counselors have been informed of this. So I just want to make you aware with Career Cruising, that's our individual learning plan, will also be shut down this July. A lot of that has to do with the financial situation. Again, there are services that the agency pays for on behalf of school districts, and when there's not a funding source, we all have to make tough calls, and we'll have to make even further ones going forward. And so Career Cruising has been around, I would say about 10 years, probably a little bit over 10 years. And so we just want to make you aware of that. Your counselors are aware of that. You may want to mention that to other folks. Hopefully they've been made aware of it as well. But just want to give you a heads up about that. Phil, our internet services has had another KETS historic moment. We'll have to add on to our timeline.
The timeline's getting fairly large. It's got 25 years worth of stuff, so. But we're going to add.
We don't have
on.
2018 on yet, so this will probably be one of the first things we add for our historic accomplishment.
Absolutely.
In 2018.
So completing what you're talking about is completing the firewall project.
Yeah.
100% done now. Complete with that. And I just want to remind our school district, this was a very complicated kind of project. If you think we're not only replacing hardware and software, we're also replacing a vendor and the way we manage it completely, and some design around that also. So a whole bunch of stuff and changing. We try to do this, and this kind of brings me up to one of our questions. We try to do this in a way that disrupts the instructional time as least as possible.
So bring up question 4.
So that's exactly what we thought it would be.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
But just to let the school districts know, we go to a lot of effort and a lot of pains to make sure that we do things, like after 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
The part I'd be interested in, and I know they may feel is the person that disagreed or anyone, just contact Phil directly, because I think you'd be interested in from their perspective. We always are interested in that kind of
We love to
thing.
hear the good stuff, but we don't know
Yeah.
where to improve unless they give us more specifics.
Or ignore it. So there's something there, and we may be able to, what you say, turn that disagree into agree if we say something. Sure.
As another historic first, we've never had 99% agreement.
That's a good way to look at it, Marty. So, but because we have this is another example, David, of a product standard, of a technology standard that we have. Because we have that, we're able to get some really, really good data on our network and how we're doing. So, I want to share with some of that with you guys and with our school districts almost every month. So we're up to 40.5 gig. That's what we averaged last month in our internet usage. But we did have a historical moment. We had a spike last week of 51 gig. So that shows us that we're growing. So we're about 20%, 19 or 20% up from this time last year. So another thing that you've heard us talk about is how many nines we have, of uptime. So we've had 3 nines, 99.9%. But what we're measuring there is 24/7 by 365, every day, every night. And during that time, we have a lot of outages, like in the evenings, and some of those are planned. Some of those are just maintenance outages, some of those are upgrades that we do for school districts. So if you peel all of that out, and you just include the instructional time that we have, we're at 4 nines. So we're at 99.99% uptime during instructional hours. And so I think that's a really, really good stat that we're able to do. And so got a lot more data that we're going to be able to show school districts and be able to share with school districts going forward.
But we did have some latency
We had-
issues last week that,
We had latency last week. We're continuing to keep an eye on that this week. We did some emergency maintenance, I think, last Wednesday night. And I think we've got that cured. That was not on the firewalls that we have, that we just put in place, but that was on the Internet Gateway firewall, the big one.
where's that at?
It's in Lithia Springs, Atlanta, or close to Atlanta, Georgia.
Okay.
So we did some maintenance on that, or AT&T did some maintenance on that, but we think we have that cured. So, but we're still keeping a real close eye on it.
Good.
So. The other thing I want to announce is the new KDE Notify iPhone app that's in the store now. We've done a revamp of that, and just keep in mind for school districts, this is a really good way to keep up with what's going on our network, catch service advisories, and also for other audiences like chief finance officers can, kind of keep an eye on what's going on with Munis. Instructional officers can keep an eye on what's going on with campus, for instance. So there's a lot of channels there versus not just what's going on on our network. So. And there's also other ways to get those notifications. You can go directly to our website, the kdenotify.education.ky.gov, and you can sign up for RSS feeds. And you don't have to do the app at all. But the app is a really good way to kind of opt in and get what you want as far as notifications.
Yeah.
So.
And I did, Chuck, once you rotate that up here, just give a quick update. Maybe you'll count that later. Quick update to our Office 365 and Google email upgrades and transition.
Sure. So we are on the downhill slide at this point of the overall migrations.
Home stretch?
Home stretch. We've, as of last week, we had 116 districts that had finished their implementation. We have 4 more waves every Thursday from now, this week until May the 10th, when we look to complete all of the district migrations. We've got a few things on the backside of it in regards to distribution list, cleanup of some of the old stuff we've got in the mega tenant, getting rid of the space shuttle or OLPS. But I just can't say enough positive things about our customer base, their hard work, their planning, their communications. Things have just continued to go extremely well. Do want to point out, though, that we still continue to put priority on recognizing that all of our customers are in a new place. They're having to manage some things they've never had to manage before. All right, so in our conversations and dialogue ongoing with Google and Microsoft, we're going to make sure that we continue to offer some additional opportunities for every district when it comes to the administration of Office 365 or G Suite for Education, just to make sure folks are comfortable with where they're at. But things are going really well.
Good.
Really well.
So, as I brief, we have 116 as of today, including Jefferson County and Fayette County.
Mhm.
We're still scheduled second week of May to be finished, and we're doing somewhere around 20 a week.
That's correct.
To finish us on
That's
that,
correct.
right?
That's correct.
All right.
We've got 20 more going this week and on up through the
I gotta tell you
10th.
what, I always gotta remind folks though, is it's at a level, they think we're doing a 100% transition to Google. And I always gotta remind them. So we're gonna give out the stats of the districts, but also just the number, I know you're working on this.
Right.
Is, given that Fayette and Jefferson stayed with Microsoft, I'm interested in the percentages of adults and students.
Sure.
That are with Google and are with just not the percentage of districts, but what does that mean in numbers?
Right.
To help folks understand that. So, but it's over and over again. Just let them know it's both.
Correct.
They were chosen both. It wasn't just pure Google, but somehow just pure Google has stayed on the minds of folks, and so we'll have to help them through that.
Well, we want to continue to emphasize the goal of the initiative. One of the goals, there's a few, but primarily was to make sure that every district had access to both.
Yeah.
Okay, and whatever tools are applicable to whatever they need in their culture, we want them to make sure they're using.
Yeah, and some of that's just me educating Katie staff too, because you've seen where I've had to say, where it's not 100%, so I know it's happening out there. Thank you, Chuck.
Yes, sir.
The last topic we have is the Ed Tech planning and budget. We've already talked about offers of assistance. Lisa Moore went with me to present to the ARRS committee. What does that stand for?
Administration Regulation Review.
Yes.
Subcommittee?
That's what it
Yes.
is, Administration
Okay.
Regulation Review.
Yep, and so they approved it. You know, I came table, didn't have any, you know, it was a double thumbs up without any kind of questions associated with it, which is a good thing. It has one last step, speaking of the home stretch, one last item before it becomes official is a joint education committee in May and June. And then it's our anticipation that we will start operating off that master plan in July. But I'll let you know as soon as that approved. I don't anticipate any kind of major thing with this since it's got an overwhelming approval and support going through there. Mike, anything on E-rate? I know we had some things last month, but I don't think we have
I don't
anything.
think there's any new information.
I did have one question we put up, question 5 about PD opportunities. This was a Marty Park question, so Marty.
That's good. Good to see.
You know, we have a lot of, Dave, we have a lot of summer activities being planned and scheduled. And so I know we have our team who will continue to support different summer events as well as partnering with school districts and regional leadership to pull some cool things off this year.
Is there another topic that's bubbled up with Go Soapbox I need to hit on? Okay, good. Well, thanks. Hopefully next month we can tell you a little bit more about the budget, but it may be the one after that. I'll go in details, but thanks, and we'll see you next month. Take care.